So this evening I will read from the prologue the account of the Mother of God and her entry into the temple, and then I'd like to make some comments and share some commentary from the Holy Fathers on this feast, and specifically, the passage from Hebrews that we just read, and the passages that we read from the Old Testament, that if you notice, the two have very much similarities, Hebrews and the Old Testament, echoing again these images for us. So let's look a little closer to the Mother of God and her entry into the temple. When the Most Holy Virgin had reached the age of 3, her parents, Joachim and Anna, took her from Nazareth to Jerusalem to give her to the service of God in fulfillment of their promise. It was 3 days' journey to Jerusalem, but going as they were on God's work, they did not find the journey difficult. Many of Joachim and Anna's kinsmen gathered to take part in this celebration, in which the invisible angels of God also took part. Maidens went ahead with lighted candles in their hands, followed by the Most Holy Virgin, led on either side by her father and mother. The Virgin was clad in royal and beautiful garments like those of the king's daughter, the bride of God spoken of in Psalm 44. Behind them walked many of their kinsfolk and friends, all bearing lighted candles. There were 15 steps leading to the temple. Her parents stood the Virgin on the first step, and she ran quickly to the top on her own, where the high priest Zacharias, the father of St. John the Forerunner, met her, taking her by the hand, led her not only into the temple, but into the Holy of Holies, the holiest place of all, into which none could enter except the high priest, and that only once a year. St. Theotokos of Ohrid says that Zacharias was out of himself and moved by God when he led the Virgin into the chief place in the temple beyond the second curtain. Otherwise, there could be no explanation of his action. Her parents then offered sacrifices to God according to the law, received the priest's blessing, and returned home, leaving the Most Holy Virgin in the temple. She dwelled in the temple for 9 whole years while her parents were alive. They visited her very often. When they departed this life, the Holy Virgin was left an orphan and longed to remain in the temple for the rest of her days without entering into marriage. This being contrary to both the law and Israelite custom, she was confided at the age of 12 to St. Joseph, a kinsman of hers in Nazareth, so that she might, under the protection of the betrothal, live in virginity, and thus fulfill both her desire and the demands of the law. For it was unknown in Israel at that time for a girl to vow perpetual virginity. The Most Holy Virgin Mary was the first to do this, and was later followed by thousands upon thousands of virgin men and women in the Church of Christ. So today I want to reflect on the images of the temple for a moment, right? You have this image of the outer and the inner temple, right? A holy place where sacrifices were offered. And then you had an inner temple. And perhaps you know what was kept in the inner temple. You heard some of the outer temple's description, right? The table of showbread, the 7-branch candle, and the altar of incense, the incense censer. And then on the inside of the Holy of Holies, there was only one thing, and that was the Holy Tabernacle. And this was something that God had exacted the description of to be built in Exodus. And the reason why I think now that I reflect upon it, why it was so exact and so detailed, every little detail, and it had to be just right, made with the most perfect things. And the commentary here will express a little bit of some of these things to us. But the Mother of God also is special and unique. And we might say that it took this long, this many 1,800 to 2,000 years, for her to come into being, that the church was waiting, that Israel was waiting for the true and holy Messiah to come. They had to wait on the right tabernacle. The tabernacle that was prepared. The tabernacle that was ready to meet the holy God of the universe in her womb. And so here are some of the commentaries on this, which I thought were very, very interesting. So we have this concept that I first want you to contemplate, and that is that the Mother of God, right, is the temple of the Lord Jesus Christ. And then also I want you to reflect, though, that we, his body, are also the temple of the Lord. And every divine liturgy, we become the temple of the Lord again. Now, as I reflect on this, we're not really worthy like the Mother of God. At least I can say I'm not. I'm not really that worthy like she was. She was prepared. I am usually unprepared. I am usually not really where I should be. I try to be, but I fail. And I know you do too. I know none of us can stand and say that we've arrived or that we are holier than the Mother of God. And yet, somehow, as St. Basil calls on us to pray, we say, we know we're not worthy, Lord, but by your mercy, by your grace, you have called us and made us worthy, right? The Mother of God was perhaps more worthy than we were by a long shot, but she still also had an unworthiness that had to be made up in a certain sense. So as we reflect on that, I want you to think about these words from all these holy saints. So first, there are two large tents that usually, I say a large tent, usually in the tabernacle's case, had two divisions, an outer and an inner. And the outer tent was entered first, and it was called holy. Just like this nave space that we're in is a holy place. This is a holy place as well. And the second, the first was a division of the tabernacle. And he shall speak of two divisions and two tabernacles. The first veil opened from the outside to the holy place, and the second veil opened from the holy place into the Holy of Holies. So there was a veil, like we know what veils are, right? Veils cover holiness. That's what they're about. They separate from holiness. That's why women wear head coverings, because they are holy. And so they're covering their holiness before the angels. St. John continues commenting on this idea, and he says, he now shows the scheme of the tabernacle. How? He speaks of the holy and also of the Holy of Holies. The holy place, then, is a symbol of the former time, for there all things took place by means of sacrifice. But the Holy of Holies of this that is now present. In other words, the Mother of God is this Holy of Holies. She's no longer distant. She's no longer far away. This Holy of Holies is now brought down to us, right? Come down to us so that we can actually not be afraid like the priest that suddenly he's going to die inside the altar because he did something wrong or moved wrong. No, now the altar has been opened. You notice that the holy doors stand open, right? The iconostas is an open space now. We can see in them. We're not kept from that anymore. And this is what St. John is emphasizing now, that the Mother of God, she broke this wall. She broke down this division and helped to bring us to the Father. St. Hippolytus, commenting on the verses following that, says that the ark was the first, and matter of fact, he was the first saint, St. Hippolytus, to actually describe the Mother of God as the Holy Ark. He compares the Virgin Mary, Theotokos, to liturgical vessels. And this is taken from the Orthodox canon, the Mathewson canon of August the 15th, where St. Cosmos writes, that's the next one. This one is just from St. Hippolytus from his Patriological Syrica, which is a commentary. Now the Lord was without sin, being in his human nature from incorruptible wood, and that is from the Virgin, and being sheathed, as it were, in pure gold of the Logos within the Spirit without. So the tabernacle itself was made of acacia wood, and then it was covered in gold. So the wood represents the Mother of God, and the gold represents, of course, the Lord himself. St. Cosmas, the poet and bishop, compares the Virgin Mary, the Theotokos, also to liturgical vessels, when he writes in the Orthodox canon, as I mentioned, "Thy Son, O Virgin, has truly made thee dwell in the Holy of Holies, as a bright candlestick, flaming with the immaterial fire, as a golden censer burning with divine coal, as the vessel of manna and the rod of Aaron, and the tablet written by God as a holy ark and table of the sacred bread." So every aspect of the tabernacle, you guys know that the tabernacle had Aaron's rod, it had the vessel with the manna, and it had also the book of the commandments, the tablets of the commandments. And each one of these things actually represents the Mother of God and her work, right? She would bring the manna. She would bring the life to the world through the feeding on Christ. The budding of Aaron's rod, it was budded out of nothing. There's no water. It just spontaneously budded. This is also true of the Mother of God, who was birthed without a man. And then also, she's talked about as the censer, right? That there's a coal that sits in the censer, a hot coal, and yet does not burn it up. And this is, again, an image of the Mother of God taken from this canon. The hymns of the Feast of the Entrance of the Mother of God, St. George the hymnographer chants, "The law prefigured thee most gloriously as the tabernacle, the divine jar of manna, the wondrous ark, the veil of the temple, the rod of Aaron, the temple never to be destroyed, and the gate of God." That gate of God, brothers and sisters, is the Mother of God. And notice it says the temple will never be destroyed. We know that the temple in Israel came tumbling down in 70 AD and has still not been rebuilt. Because it's not to be rebuilt. Because the temple no longer is made of bricks and stone. The temple is made of flesh and blood. It began with the Mother of God. She was the one who led the way for us so that we could also, in our humility and in our unworthiness, be willing to receive also the King of the universe in our very flesh, if you will. Through our blood, through our very being, Christ can enter into us if we allow him. Now the question becomes, are we his temple? Are we acting in a way that expresses Christ? We have a lot of young people here today, and kids. One of the primary things that you can do, matter of fact, I would say it's probably one of the top things. I'd say it is the top thing you do. Does anybody know what it is that you can do to express this image of God in you? Anybody know?
Be in church.
Close.
Love.
It's to be obedient to your parents. All the parents are like, yeah. No, it's true. Because obedience is what the Mother of God was. She set this tone for us when the Lord came to her and said, "Will you allow me to come and save the people through you?" And she could have said, "Nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do my chores today. I don't want to do my things today." No. She examples the yes and said yes to God, right? And even now, at 3 years old, what's she do? She runs up the temple. Can you imagine a 3-year-old like this little guy here, a little bit older than him, but running up those stairs joyously, it says, with joy, because she knew what she wanted. She knew from the very beginning that she was going to be part of this big plan. So, children, by simply just obeying your parents. Once you're 18, then you can, do your own thing. But until that time, if you just obey your parents, you will gain the most blessing. You will be blessed like the Mother of God. Because she listened to her parents and obeyed her parents too. So if we want God to be in us, we, and adults, this applies to you as well. You have to be obedient to your parents, right? Right now, sort of, who is your parent? Me and God, right? Through God, I direct you on, things to do. So in a sense, you have parents too. When you don't obey your priest, you don't get blessing. I guarantee it. This is across the board. The Mother of God is teaching us a lesson. If we really want to be the vessel of God, right? A holy vessel, then we have to be obedient to Christ's commands. We have to be obedient to the idea that we need purity of heart. We need to be pure. To be pure, as we studied in the Theotokos, one of the definitions for it is to always have God on your mind. If you always have God on your mind, always thinking about Him, impure things don't have any room to come in. You automatically are thinking of Him. You're like, no, this wouldn't be good. No, I'm not going to do no. And you automatically have Him as a part of your thinking. I believe this is what the Mother of God teaches us. That everything she did, everything she said, how she walked, how she lived, do whatever He says, she says. Do whatever He says. That's the Mother of God's direction for us. And so it's an obedience thing, right? It's an obedience to God. Trusting in Him. She exampled the way for us. That's why she ran up the stairs. That's why she lived in the temple and she never left it until she was betrothed to Joseph, who then took her and protected her until she could bring into the world our salvation. That's why we say, Holy Theotokos, save us. Because without her saying yes, we couldn't even be there. The Lord would have said, well, okay, you don't want to, that's okay. If she would have said no, it would have been a long wait. Maybe we would have been waiting a long time ago. But the beauty is that God, people who love God, are obedient to Him. No matter what it takes in our life, no matter what things come at us, we always turn back to that obedience, and God will bless us. The Mother of God today teaches us to enter into the temple, but she also teaches us to be the temple. So, I ask you, are you the temple of God? Are you being the temple of God? Children, are you obeying your parents? Faithful adults, are you obeying those over you? This is what God is asking of us. Let the Mother of God teach us, help her instruct us, and also know that in the end, the Mother of God actually became the true leader of the apostles. This was imaged very early on, that she was the one who actually led the church and guided the church. Or sometimes it was disguised in the tradition because of her being a woman. But in fact, she was the leader. She was the one where everyone checked in to make sure this is the way we should do it. I'm sure the apostles had many consults with her. Because as they were growing up, I'm sure they saw her many times. So brothers and sisters, let's remember that she also guides us. Not only does she example for us the life that we should live, but we can go to her and intercede, ask for intercession from her, to ask for her help. And I've done this many times. And I will continue to do it because I know she's faithful. She always answers, and she looks to protect us because she loves us. We are like her children. And so she wants the best for us. So let's give the Mother of God glory and honor for her humility, her willingness to say yes, and her willingness to be obedient. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to God.